Good morning from the Water Utilization Learning Center in Gothenburg, Nebraska. My name is Brian Olson. I'm out here with Carl Coburn on a beautiful May 23rd morning. We're moving along here through the planting season, and Carl and I were out here to talk about weed control. And so, Carl, obviously conditions have been really wet, and if by chance we're able to get a pre-emergence herbicide out there, there was probably some delays between getting the corn or soybeans in the ground and that pre-emergence herbicide. And so, what kind of concerns do you have in this situation?
Yeah, so the main concern, I guess, would be that most of that herbicide you applied is going to be, moving down deeper into the soil below that area where the weeds are going to germinate. Typically, most of the weeds we deal with germinate in the top 1 to 2 inches of the soil. And if we get a lot of moisture, that can move that residual herbicide you applied down below where those weeds are going to be able to germinate and pick it up and be effectively controlled. So I would be concerned that we're going to get a flush of weeds sooner than we were expecting. So maybe when the crop is just poking through the soil, or shortly after, we're going to start seeing weeds where maybe in a more typical year we might have a few extra weeks before we start seeing them come up.
Yeah, very good. And so we also have some fields that maybe have received 8 to 10 inches of rain, sometimes in 3 or 4 inch amounts. And so sometimes we have soil movement. What does that do to herbicides?
So you can get some pooling in the area where your crop's coming up. So if you do get some of that soil movement, some of that herbicide gets attached to that soil and moves with the water. You can get some spotty areas where you get some of that herbicide settling out in one spot, maybe it moved from another area. So you're not going to get control in that one area, whereas where it all settled, you could see potentially some crop injury there, maybe some weed control, but potentially also some crop injury if you get a lot of that moisture that's going to move the soil.
So farmers need to, as they move forward, really be cognizant that yes, if they did get a pre-emergence out there, that's great, but in reality, it's probably going to need to be freshened up a little bit sooner in the crop growth life cycle than they anticipated. And so we're standing out here in some of your soybean research. What are some of the concerns that farmers need to be aware of as they think about freshening up their herbicide?
So yeah, there's a few different scenarios, but really I look at it as, do I have a crop poking up out of the ground or is it still in the ground? And there's a little bit of variability there, but if you do have a crop that's starting to poke up, I think at this point, where we are with herbicide resistance, we don't want to be making any applications without residual herbicide in there. And so if I'm in a situation where I have soybeans poking through and I need to freshen up that application, I would think about throwing in acetochlor or an acetochlor plus famecifin. That'll give you some residual to carry you through a little bit. You'll likely still need a second application in crop, but a freshen up application will get most of your early emerging pigweed ideally. And so you really do want to pay attention. If your crop is poking through, you're not going to want to use your typical residual herbicides in soybeans, at least. Most of the PPOs, like the flumioxazin, the sulfentrazone type products, you need to apply those within 3 days of planting. So if you're anywhere near cracking or you are cracking, you don't want to still use those products, and that's where you'd probably switch to an acetochlor.
So we got some examples of some soybeans cracking out here?
Yeah, so if you look down here, these were planted roughly a week ago, and we have been pretty cool, but you can see here the soybeans are cracking through, the cotyledons are getting pulled up, and this would be a situation where if you did spray a typical soybean pre-emerge like a flumioxazin or a sulfentrazone, where you would see some severe injury potential.
Okay, so any guidelines for corn?
Think about the same things in corn. If you are cracking through, you might want to look at the labels of the product you were using. For products like isoxaflutol, if the corn is poking through, you can apply that up to V2, but you need to be cautious about what adjuvants you add with that and what other active ingredients you add in with that. So I would say look at the label on that. But the same thing as with soybeans, throwing in an acetochlor is going to be safe for your crop in most cases and give you some extended residual control to take you to that in-crop post-application.
So ultimately, got to follow that label. There's reasons why we've got restrictions on there. And then as we move forward, going to have to go through there and evaluate weed control on a case-by-case basis, but understand that there's probably going to be some areas that you're going to have to freshen up a little bit sooner with that residual herbicide than anticipated. Alrighty, any other final thoughts, Carl?
Good luck out there.
All right, everybody have a safe planting season and spraying season, and we'll talk to you next time from the Learning Center. Thank you.
Thanks for watching this video from the Gothenburg Water Utilization Learning Center. For more information, please call 308-537-4500.